Welcome to the Total Acre Podcast. I'm your host, C.R. Siebold. This podcast is all about helping growers unlock their potential. We aim to bring listeners agronomic insights, valuable educational interviews, real-world strategies that optimize yield and maximize ROI. This show is going to explore innovative practices, creative strategies, and breakthrough products with people that are shaping the industry, all through engaging and inspiring stories. Who better to learn from than the legendary world champion David Hula, Randy Dowdy, and Alex Harrell? Because in farming and in life, iron always sharpens iron. And the best way to grow or get better is to continually be learning, networking with peers, have access to industry leaders, and the tools, tips, and tricks, and overall quality of information. Knowledge is power. Tune in, hit play. Let's unlock your farm's potential together. Hey, y'all, Chad Siebold here with Total Acre Podcast, coming to you live with some folks up in the Quad Cities, up around Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jeff Kazin, Mike Rolfson with Agris Academy. Hey, guys, thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us on.
I say coming in, right? Virtually, right? I know, Jeff, you just got out of the field. Things have been wet up north. I know in terms of the struggle, it's real this year with our producers everywhere across the U.S., but Minnesota's no different.
Yeah, that's right. We had a great start and a great crop in the ground, and then it's really turned off wet, which just has really just slowed us down, right? Staying on time on applications but we've got a really good crop here in Minnesota, and then we have another farming operation in Ohio that, it's struggled, right? Some of the ground's not going to get planted. A lot of it got mudded in, and we are, really struggling with getting out in the fields and getting timely herbicide and fertilizer applications.
Imagine that. Mother Nature not working with us, Mike. It's always something, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they call it farming and not manufacturing.
Right. 100%. Well, listen, guys, we've known each other for a little while now. And Jeff, you've been a member with Total Acre since the inception. I think probably on year 5 or 6 now. We appreciate that. And I think the cool thing is as a member, you're able to kind of utilize the software and the technology within Total Acre for your own operation. But I think the exposure that you have with the network is kind of cool too, because you get a chance to bounce ideas off. And, most of the folks within the Total Acre network are really appreciative of some of the products and services that the Agris Academy offers. And I want to dive into that here in a minute. But Jeff, as you look at Total Acre, what drew you into becoming a member years ago?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a cluster of Total Acre members here. They, brought me maybe kicking and screaming a little bit, just trying to get the right timing. And, it was good because there was a group of farmers and I got to know them really well. And there's just no doubt when you look at the results, particularly on our corn, we've just learned a lot. Nobody teaches high-end farming, right? You don't go to a 4-year school. You tend to get in a rut with, what's in your area or what dad taught you, right? And now you surround yourself with it's the culture and type of personality that comes and joins Total Acre. They want to learn, they want to push. And when you surround yourself with that culture, it pushes you. And it made a huge difference, really getting in and winning in the details of the farming operation. We've just had a tremendous boost in our corn yields. I thought we were county farm average today. Today we're, 30, 40 bushel over county average type of farmers. Now it's taken more money and it's taken some investment and time. But it's what you learn, it's the people you surround yourself, and then it's, pushing yourself. And then it's that network of people you meet along the way. Farmers tend to be a little bit introverted, right? We go off and do our own things. We have our groups, and here it kind of pushes your comfort zone. And, I'd say I talk to a Total Acre member almost every day somewhere in my network. If you're in the truck, if you're in a tractor, you got a minute. And, there's no hesitancy about, I tried this, it didn't work, or I tried this and it did. The network is probably almost as valuable as kind of the core learning in my mind.
Yeah. I got drug in, now you won't leave, right?
Yeah. I would describe Jeff as a career learner, and likes to challenge himself in a lot of ways. And I'll share another story that he shared many times is that, all the other aspects of commercializing, his crop was there from his legacy experience through the risk management and merchandising side. But agronomy he wanted to, I think, to quote you, Jeff, you wanted to be in position to ask your agronomist tougher questions. and certainly Total Acre allowed him to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
he was drug in years ago, and now you won't leave, right? And I think we love having you. And so, Mike, your background's a bit different. And Jeff, I want to jump into your background here a little bit more. But Mike, give us a story. How'd you guys get connected? And I know you're up in Minnesota as well, but
Yep.
with Agris Academy, working really closely with Jeff.
Yep. Well, I always describe myself as a lifer in ag. About that, a little bit more than 50% of it I spent in Cargill, both here and abroad, doing about everything you can do commercially there. I met Jeff on the grain trading side in the mid 90s. Jeff had the basis from Quiet Riot kind of mullet going back then, believe it or not. You could see him from 50 desks away across the trade floor. And we've been friends ever since. Our paths took slightly different routes. I got a little sick of the big company world in 2009 and sort of went into the nascent ag company, ag tech, venture capital world for about a dozen years. Because I finished in Cargill Ventures and kind of got the bug on that. But it's been an absolute blast coming back to the future. We're about year 3 now on this. Really, with the genesis of it all was Jeff's idea that the U.S. producer isn't taught the same merchandising skills that we were taught. And that's really our mission in life. And it's just fantastic. I've joked on another podcast, I'm way more the Carhartt type than the Patagonia venture capital vest type. And I feel a lot more comfortable, being on a farm, talking with farmers, as opposed to certainly being in the ag world and, talking in venture capital. It's way more my style, and I'm having a blast.
Well, Mike, you speak the lingo, and that's 9/10 of the law, right? At the end of the day, too, as one of the founders or co-founders with Jeff, so who drug who along? That's what I want to know, right? How'd you guys get into this mess together?
It was organic.
Yeah, I guess.
I've been looking for an excuse. Yeah, you finished, Jeff, but we've been looking for an excuse to get together for a long time.
Yeah,
cool.
we've wanted to do something together for a long time. Never really. I had a long career in Cargill, so I started. I was from a very small farm in Southwest Ohio. Went and got the ag degree. Jumped on and became a trader for Cargill, and then grew that into a 30-year career and traded all over the world and all kinds of things. And in 2009 started my farm. I was a classic first gen ish kind of farm, and owned some land by then, rented some land, and set out with my little 6-row 611 John Deere planter and read the book, and that's how we started. Made lots of mistakes, and finished a career. And I was ready to move out and do more farming, unless corporate America. And part of that was to join Total Acre. I knew I was deficient in agronomy. And that was a big piece of the puzzle. I have agronomists that hire outside agronomy, and my goal in Total Acre was to be able to ask better questions. As Mike, it wasn't really to go out and win yield contests. We have, but that wasn't ever the goal. Still isn't really the goal. And so, was exiting Cargill and actually has some roots in Total Acre. I had made a career out of teaching new merchants as part of the things that was expected of me, to take young people and teach them the trade. And actually, we were sitting with David and the company in South Dakota one evening. There was some extra time, and things were getting a little late. And he said, "Hey, why don't you just show me, what this thing really looks like, and why people get frustrated in merchandising." And I sat there and we had a whiteboard, and I just went and I could draw it out. And that was, I've been toying with this because, of course, you're in the Total Acre environment, which can be a very learning environment. I knew that this is basically a parallel path. It's, we're not, as an ag community, and particularly the U.S., we're not getting taught at the high enough level on all kinds of things.
Sure.
And Total Acre is one of those groups, one of these peer groups. There's various things that are pushing it. They're sprouting up out of the need, right? And for us to teach merchandising, we didn't want to be a broker or an advisor. I get asked all the time. We had very strong opinions of that, and I just sat there and talked. And I think the Total Acre crowd really liked it because obviously an industry insider on the buy side of grain, and really speaking some truths that I think farms had always suspected. Because I've seen both sides. And so it kind of took off from there. We kind of kicked it off. Mike was rolling out of the project team that he was on, and it's been great. He's a great partner, and it just took off. I mean, the need is
What
so
he was
strong.
saying behind the scenes, Mike, before you come on, that's not what he was saying. He's a great partner, but, no, I'm just kidding. The funny thing, Jeff, is you talk about your business, it's very unique, right? And again, I'll kind of go back a little bit to the Total Acre stuff. I don't want to make it a Total Acre commercial here either, but we talk about unlocking potential, right? So a lot of what you're talking about in this business is there's a different type of language that's out there in the marketplace. If you can't speak the language, it's really hard to manage the risk. Having the right tools to be able to understand that language and then be able to position, right? Manage your position and that risk. If you don't know some of those secret things you were just talking about, I'm sure that on that initial whiteboard, you guys were kind of pushing some stuff out there and they're like, aha, right? There's some aha moments there along the way. But I'm excited to dig into those details. But I will say from our standpoint, it's not enough just to grow, like you said, bushels, right? It's not enough to be a champion, right? So we talk about unlocking potential. Once you got it in the bin, it's not enough to just to sell that crop. How do you mark that? How do you get the most ROI out of those bushels? So Mike, what is one of the biggest problems that you see with growers that Agris Academy helps solve?
Super fundamental to that is looking at life, your merchandising and risk management life through the lens of basis and future spreads. The siren song of day-to-day futures market commentary, granted, is certainly important for contextual things and the like. But when we teach you to think and function like a merchant, just like we were taught, a lot of that noise goes away. But 95% of the people we engage in the beginning of this don't look at life and their marketing decisions through basis and through future spreads, and that's a fundamental mistake. That again, it's not out of anything other than they were never taught that, and that's our reason for being.
Makes sense, Jeff. Same question. What do you think as you're looking at the business from the outside looking in? Right, it's kind of hard to do sometimes. What's the biggest problem that you're solving at Agris for a grower?
Well, there's a whole list, right? And Mike hits on the education side, right? There's a huge just amount of fundamental education. And I think at a very high level, it's becoming a risk manager for the farm and stop being a speculator. And that's extremely hard to do. We talk about it. We show why you're not going to beat these highly efficient markets. I've been in the markets. I've traded with hundreds of people, millions of dollars behind me. We were struggling to make money consistently in these markets, and really changing a complete mindset. All these big companies, these big food companies, these big commercials, they all have risk managers, right? They may take flat price risk just like us farmers, but they do it isolated and under limit, right? That's the best practice from the industry. We bring that, but I'd say that's the number one mindset change, particularly on the future side, is now I'm a risk manager farm, and Mike has coined the phrase, it clears headspace. It allows you to make calmer, better decisions, less reactive decisions when you become that risk manager. We talk about this early in a class or early in a workshop. Everybody nods and they get it, and we can prove it. We bring the numbers out, but it probably takes a year before people really sets in. And I'd say that's probably our number one kind of psychological change. And of course, there's a ton of skills, right? Change to become the risk manager, and then know, here's this basket of skills on how to apply this tool at this time, and what's the market really telling us, and all the skill pieces. These are the same skills we taught beginning merchants. They're the same skills that when you call up your ethanol plant or your crush plant, that merchant on the other side is going to have those skills. And we're leveling the playing field, right? When you can talk their language, it absolutely makes a difference. And after 3 years, and just, example from clients, customers, students, we know it works. It's just margins are too narrow. We need this part to make it work. We can't let this money slip to the wrong side of the ledger. And in my mind, as a farmer, I'm taking the risk. I deserve to be paid, right? Sure, and I should 100%. Maximize that value. And so that's what we want to try to. We want to make sure that if you're taking the risk, that you're getting the earnings that you deserve for taking that risk.
So Jeff, here's one thing, and I'll reposition the question to myself here, because from the outside looking in, right, the problem that I see you guys solving is your format is digestible, number one, right? and you're getting the easy button for a grower to understand the markets, right? Like that's the biggest problem that I think you guys solve. Everything you guys both just said absolutely are pieces and parts of that, but your format is different than anything else in the marketplace that I've seen. Again, I will talk about total acre access to information, right? You guys make that access to that information digestible and usable, right? Because a lot of times what I've seen, and again, this is not trying to pump your tires up here, but as a producer, we have to have digestible information. We have to have something that's now then usable, where I can go, if I'm working with my local merchandiser, right? If I have these secret weapons, I can use those weapons, and then now all of a sudden I've got maybe a different respect, right, in that market, and now I can actually pull some triggers and levers to really position or reposition my risk.
Yeah,
and so I would say that's absolutely.
The part you just said, even Jeff and I could go through a list of 50 other skills, but just the mere fact that they know that you know, you are treated differently forevermore by your buyers, and that by itself is meaningful cents per bushel forevermore.
Absolutely. Kind of put you back in control as a producer, right? So now we did all this work to get it in the bin, and we've got our 300 bushel corn, and then why should we throw away 50 bushels worth of margin away on, stuff that just doesn't matter? So let's talk about this for a second. When you start talking about education, right? Because that's a big piece of total acre as well. Positioning and managing risk. Either one of you want to take, kind of as you start to kind of put a program together, and again, a session, or Jeff, maybe you want to talk about not a session, but you have a systematic approach, kind of like what Brian does with some of the trial stuff. But your system is really a program, right? And that's a multi-step system, a program. If you guys want to take that, maybe just talk a little bit about the program.
Yeah, I guess. So we teach a class, a master's class in the wintertime. It's an online class. So this year will be our third year. We had about 105 participants last year. And we walk them through a very systematic process of, kind of breaking things down. Obviously, I farm. Mike's involved in farming. We spend a lot of time on farms and with farmers. So we speak it in the language, right? We don't try to overwhelm people. We're not talking about anything about markets. You'll be hard pressed to get Mike and I to, talk about a Brazilian crop or a USDA
futures market.
Futures markets, right? We don't spend a lot of time talking about those in class, or actually none. And we really start to ground through the system. And, we say, if you want to relate it back to total acre, it's what is that first must do, right? We have the must do's in total acre. And that first must do, if you're going to be a good risk manager for the farmers, you have to know your position. And that's just, and so we actually have produced a tool, and we have YMS and total acre. We have our tool. It's our Agris risk tracker. It's comprehensive. Nobody else is doing it correctly in our mind in the industry. Lots of people are trying. They have pieces, parts on the provider side. And we brought it from a risk management perspective, put that in. We get everybody in the class in that. They put their own, like you said, they have their own crop, their own bushels. Nothing teaches you like your own money at risk. And we start walking, we build them up. We start, making things clear and building people up. And we have really, some really great students, and they pick it up, and then they can continue to use that again and again. So yeah, that first part is that first step in the process. That must do is you got to understand your risk position. You can't manage a risk you don't see, you don't understand. And Mike will tell the stories, right? When you're in the industry, if you were at Cargill and you didn't know your position, and the trading manager came out of his pearly office, right? You get fired. They would absolutely embarrass you, chew you out.
So I got this. I love that, Jeff.
It was the conviction of your answer on your position. So
I love the program, the systematic approach, right? So as soon as you said education in class, I see some guys on the other side going, I don't need to be a student anymore, right? Like, you guys know this, right? You see
we get that all the time.
So, and we all had, whether you went to college and you didn't like some of the professors, or maybe you didn't go to class because you were doing extracurricular activities. I'm pointing at you, Jeff. But at the end of the day, right, some of these things are scary. So, Mike, when you talk about how you connect with growers and education, maybe talk a little bit about how you make that fun and exciting for a grower to come in and learn.
Well, Jeff already hit on it. We're not here to show off or flex on what we know. We're here to make it clear and things that build toward, between class 1 and class 20, all in a very organized and meaningful way. And the other part is we're trying to avoid too much in the theoretical and make it extremely practical, actionable, and sort of flexible within the operation, because one, all of these skills are important, but two, risk profiles and capabilities and resources within each farm are different. No one farm is exactly the same. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how this curriculum sort of fits within that flexible reality. We have customers that farm, tens of thousands of acres, and we have folks that, are an airplane pilot by day and a hobby farmer on the side and want to get bigger.
Sure.
But again, it all coalesces around that desire to learn. And we try to build around that. And I'll say one other thing, even though it might feel like a college class in a way, we teach within the college infrastructure at a college, but Jeff and I are available as needed, when needed, during the season of the class. So if you want to really have a meaningful hour with us every single week to talk through the things that are either unto the curriculum or maybe something applicable to your farm, we really make ourselves available to cinch it all up and make sure you're learning what you're learning along the way.
I like it, Mike. And, continual improvement, right? You hear that a lot within Total Acre, but you either evolve with the business, right, and grow, or you go away. And I think we've seen that, right? And part of that is managing risk. Jeff, back to you here. When we started talking, I think you had said something about the money moving to the other side of the ledger. And I think we all know what you meant by that. But I'm sure you've seen some big slides one way or the other and some big mistakes, right? Just, I know that not to kind of make light of some of these guys that are maybe having some of these, but what are some of the common problems? You see these big issues out there that, man, it's the difference between a farm making it or not. Just huge swings, right? What's some of the big things you've seen out there that have caused some problems?
Wow. The biggest probably single place where we've actually had to come in and call it a rescue or been brought to do an intervention, right, is where people are using complex or are sold complex merchandising products on the futures side and they don't understand them, right? And
margin calls.
They get doubled up. They don't understand what it did to their risk or didn't manage their risk long enough. Those probably have caused the worst financial catastrophes that we've seen. There's a lot of money to be made selling those products. I know, I was part of that. I was on the sell side of those products. We would make more money selling a product than we did elevating the grain. We could buy a grain elevator just so we could talk to a farmer, right? So there's when you kind of know following the money trail, that's probably been the kind of, I don't know, the impetus of the worst disasters we've come across. But that, you can bleed by 1,000 cuts, right? We say,
sure.
In Total Acre, there's no one silver bullet, right, to growing big crops. You got to do a whole bunch of things, right? In the same way in being in merchandising skills. So we see people that make, a 2-cent miss here and a 2-cent miss here. And we're using 300. We usually use a 200 bushel example, but now we're with Total Acre, right? We're going to use a 300 bushel example, right? Every penny's worth $3 an acre. And we easily see on the corn side, 20 to 30 cents is very typical. I'm not talking about futures. I'm talking about really doing the merchandising side. Let's set the futures piece aside for a second. Well, at 300 bushels and 20 cents, right? That's $60 an acre. I got my math right.
Big dollar, yeah.
That's a big number, right? 1,000 acres, $60,000, and that's not just 1 year, right? It's repeatable. It happens again and again. And oh, by the way, maybe you have wheat or beans, and it applies to alfalfa or dry. I mean, the whole concept of risk management, merchandising, and all the things you do well goes way across the farm, and it extends itself into farm management. We spend some time talking about that. So it's not, there are crashes. There's no doubt about it. And every once in a while we get brought in, and that's never fun. I'd much rather go into a farm that's wanting to learn and move themselves forward. And what really drives people, there's some powerful motivators in life. One is people get frustrated. I don't know how many times we hear, I'm a terrible marketer. I hear it all the time. And fundamentally on the future side, that can't be true. We're not going to get into that, but the futures are super efficient, but yeah, we see people make lots of basic mistakes. And the other is just how much money it's worth, right? We get on working with a really large farm, if they can make $50 an acre, they're happy. And we'll watch them spill $50 an acre, right? Because they're just not doing the basics, right? And it's important all the way down to the smallest of farm. We get some farms that, like I said, are very small. But Mike and I, and how we go out and we make this super affordable. We want our goal is to make it widely available. It doesn't have to be just for the largest farm.
So Jeff, I gave you the tougher question, right? Which was this, the biggest fails, right? I think Mike was telling me off camera that, that year that David broke the record at 623, he sold it all for 850. It was because, I'm kidding, Mike. I'm just throwing that out there. But, again, like everybody wants to talk about that, right? Everybody wants to talk their big bushel year, and they want to talk about the big year at $8 corn. But listen, I think when we look at this as producers, it's about consistency, right? How do you get it right more years than wrong, right? If you can get 78, look at efficacy on products out in the field that we're spraying, right? If we can have efficacy over 70, 80%, we're good, right? We want to be on the top side of that percentage. So Mike, as you're talking and working with growers, let's talk more about the win side. Jeff, I gave you the loss side of things, right? But, Mike, as you're looking at winners and losers, you just have to average. You want to win more than you lose, and you want to be able to make sure that you're actually on the other side of that percentage.
Yeah. So wins, again, we brought it up a couple times, I think. Again, seeing your grain merchandising life through the lens of basis is incredibly important. Always start with basis. Always separate basis from futures. Have you're not asking your buyer, what are you paying for corn today? You are asking, what is your basis? Those are sort of things, once you've seen that get consistent in the mind of our customers or our students, is very rewarding to see. I will repeat, just because it's so damn important, what Jeff said about positions. When we sit down with clients or with students and they've got a beautifully written risk tracker out that we set up for them, and we can all sing off that same hymnal, man, does that make for a useful hour of our time. And everything, when everything is defined in the mind of you as a risk manager, your stress goes down, your decisions are better. You're looking at things through a simple framework that's actionable, as opposed to, well, I think I got this much, or I think I got that much. And I'll actually tout a former podcast of yours when you were talking about the bin control and remoisturization play on beans and stuff like that. Another thing that is a very simple fix, but I would say well over half the producers don't really understand down to the penny their cost to carry grain month by month. And that comes both in the financial side of that, as well as the shrink in the bin. And we have a very simple tool. I believe it's we beat the heck out of that tool, class number 2 in our class. And forevermore, it's extremely rewarding to see people coming to our discussions or rattling off down to the 10th of a cent what my cost to carry beans are this month. Again, that really define the rationale for you carrying grain more or not carrying it at all. And knowing that is so fundamental.
So we were, you want to talk about it really, because we love the big wins, right? It obviously feels really good. So actually this was I guess they're a current Total Acre member. We have a retain program. We're sitting there, we're at the eve of harvest, and we're looking at some non-GM contracts with them. And we're going through the details, right? Because the devil's in the details of a lot of things, products, or in this case, these contracts. And we found a contract where the buyer was, not a typical major of these non-GM beans. And we looked at the basis differentials and we said, hey, you should, we need to move these beans here. And the client says, well, we don't, they're not an approved number, right? They're clear hilum non-GM bean. And I said, Mike and I we start to teach that merchant mentality, and we're like, I bet you they want them. They're obviously somebody's making money in these chain. I said, at that number, let's, it's go make the call. Sometimes it's just teaching that merchant mentality to go make the call. So literally Mike and I, we get up, there's, there's 500 acres of these beans. So there's, 70 bushel beans, right? It's 35,000 bushels of these beans. And we Walked out the door. I said, you make the call right now. And sure enough, he calls him. He says, hey, I got these beans. They're not on your approved list. They're this Clear Highland number. And the guy's like, absolutely, we want them, right? Because they're volume business too. And sure enough, yeah, they did a deal. They came. They actually ended up hauling those beans out, and that immediately added $30,000 to the farm. It doesn't take long. And it also, unbeknownst to us, is we needed that grain system. Remember, these are non-GM systems. We got rain, and we got into trouble up here in Minnesota, and we had to dry the beans the rest of the way. And getting those beans away and out of the system was critical to getting the rest of the crop out, right? So there's just, when you get into that merchant mentality, and we see that, I'm not going to tell you that, it's not uncommon for us to have some big results. There's no doubt about it. That was just one of those ones that stood out. And we never talk to the buyers. The grower has to make that call. The grower's going to pull that. We don't do hedge accounts. We're not brokering. We're not in there. Actually, we want the growers to be self-sufficient. And it's a ton of fun. Mike and I always joke that it's, when you're in corporate America and you make a chunk of money for a big company, nobody cares. But if you're working with a farm, and it really changes either, how they're treated, or their confidence, or they make a chunk of money, or all of the above, they're super appreciative. I laughed because I said, Mike, we're going to have places to hunt, fish, and drink beer all over this country before this is done.
Really rewarding.
That's a great incentive, right? For sure.
Yeah, that's right.
What I love about it, it's a different approach, right? And I think maybe help me out on this, and I'll challenge you a little bit for a moment. As you're educating growers, and they're continually working with their, let's just say it's their buyer, or they have their consultant that they're working with in-house. How does one take some of the advice that you're using and incorporate it day one, right? Let's say I have a broker that I've worked with for the last 20 years, right? I mean, you guys see this all the time. And now all of a sudden, Mike told me something in the academy that now all of a sudden I learned in class 4 this. I go approach my broker. How do the brokers take that new, like, geez, you lost me money all these years, and if I'd only known this, right? I mean, do you get into a situation where some of that happens, or what does that look like?
We intentionally avoid the broker discussion just because we know that market is hyper efficient and extremely difficult to beat. I had the third largest corn position in Cargill at the end of my tenure, and Jeff had plenty of bigger ones after I left. So we certainly understand that a helpful advisor, a broker serves a function, but we just really, quite frankly, avoid the conversation altogether. And going back to what Jeff said earlier, is stacking nickels at a time by being a world-class physical grain trader, and winning in these things that are absolutely independent of the futures market. But an important part is, because we've lived it in the future side, teaching the best practice around them as a hedging tool, and pivoting the conversation a little bit more in the go forward with your advisors and brokers around, focusing more on the hedging piece. Or if you want to speculate, that's fine, but separate those accounts a little bit, and you have a hedging function unto your farm. So you get really core metrics of the profitability of your farm that stay there, and allow the speculation piece to be over here. So the noise that could be good or bad over here doesn't dilute your management decisions on the core functionality of your farm that can make it look good or worse just because of something you chose to do on the spec side. So
sure. I appreciate you answering that too, right? Because there are people thinking through, because I mean, what do you think? 70% of the people are out there currently working with some sort of a broker where they're not managing their own bushels today. Maybe it's higher than that. What is that number? Do you guys know?
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to
get fairly high.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's DOL. I say a lot of farms have a lot of farms have brokers or do some kind of newsletter or advisory. I think that's very common. Very relatively few have their own accounts. That they're self-managing. That's actually pretty rare. I'd say less than 10%. And we don't say that, we'll throw these very tidbits. Hedging grain will not make you more profitable. Okay, that will not happen,
Okay.
because that would say that you somehow have some insight to the market that would allow you, even if you didn't farm, you could just be a spec and make money, right?
Yep.
Over a long period of time, what hedging grain does is it makes your incomes more stable, right? Because some years you're going to have margin calls, and some years we've run the farm off of equity, and sweeping equity out of the accounts, right? Depends upon the year, but
Right.
over a long period of time, right? Hedging is a stabilization tool if you're really hedging, and that's, we have a lot of countermeasure or counter things that we say into the industry that are pretty different, because we have a very different perspective. So, brokers, I have a broker, they're great. They really help me on execution, right? Making sure we get good fills, options. Sometimes we're going down and looking through them, where's the sweet spot? Sometimes there's a lack of liquidity. They have better information than me, right? Their screens are faster than mine. Making sure we're in order. So absolutely, there's a spot we use them for our own farming operation. But we're also going to bring them, just like me pressing my agronomy. When you go through our class, you're going to press your broker, because you're thinking now more as a risk manager than a spec. And then, like Mike said, if people want a spec, and farmers are, of course, welcome to spec, we know industry best practice is to separate your spec account from your risk managed ongoing operation, so you can make good business decisions about your farm. So we bring a whole bunch of insights on how the commercial operations actually work. So if you're running a crush plant for one of the majors, you're going to basically be pretty close to even in your futures account. The speculation,
Gotcha.
particularly now, has been isolated to a very few desks. And so there's no reason that farmers can't adopt some of these best practices. These companies that are here today learn the hard way a lot of things, and we should be able to learn from those. So, yeah, isolating your speculation from your farm is just one of those things of best practice, and we challenge them, right? Sometimes it's a pretty gray area, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, within Total Acre, we do that a lot, Jeff. That happens a lot within Total Acre, right? When you talk agronomically. Right. So sometimes that challenge does create value, right? Sometimes it is a tough conversation, right? But sometimes if you can create some value out of that conversation, then we all win, right? Kind of thing. All right. So before we get into how we get into the next chapter of how we learn more about getting into some of those classes, talk to me a little bit about, if there was one thing, right? We've talked a lot today about some different things, and we've kind of scratched the surface. If there was one thing, Mike, that you wanted to leave folks with that didn't know anything about Agris Academy today, and I was like, gosh, I met these guys from Minnesota on the podcast. They're pretty cool. They talked about, but I remember this. What's the one thing, Mike, that you wanted to remember?
I would just go, create a bit of an intangible about Jeff and I, in that, we're at the stage in our lives where we really want to give back. We've learned a lot. The industry's been great to us. And our reason for being is to teach and give back. And, we're hardworking, but really humble guys. And when we like to surround ourselves with folks like that, and we're extremely approachable. Our contacts are right there on the dang website, down to our phone numbers. So if you have questions about us, come find us, talk to us. We'll find time for you and get you comfortable with what we're doing. Maybe get to learn a little bit more about what you're thinking, or where your spots are that you want to improve on. And I think before you know it, you'll want to work with us in some way. We got a lot of different ways to do it, but just come find us. When in doubt, ask.
I love it. Well, I'm gonna probably ask you here towards the end here, but David and Randy are a little bit different, right? There's different personalities. So, where David's more of the nice guy, and Dowdy might be more of the hammer, right? I don't know what the conversation then there's there, but I'm sure that you guys have different approaches the way you approach customers. Jeff, same question to you as you're out in the market and you're doing all these things out there, and maybe some of what you said today have resonated with folks, but if they remember nothing else, what would you have them? What would you leave them with, Jeff?
Yeah, I think kind of a two-piece. I might hit a great spot, but let's say that learning is a lifetime thing, right? It's a lifetime thing for you in your farming career. If you've got another generation, right? It's not like a product you use and then it goes away, right? Once you've learned it, you can carry it year after year. You can teach it to the next generation. We have a lot of people that like engage in class where it's mom, dad, and son, daughter, they take the class together. And it makes a better communication, a better situation on the farm. So I really think that this just, if you just sit down and say, I'm going to dedicate myself to learning, or get somebody in the organization, it's just that lifetime asset, and it makes farming more fun. I love farming. I think hopefully that comes through in these conversations. I think Mike does too. And we love to work with farmers, and we're out on farms all year round, plus teaching the classes and the workshops. And we just love doing what we do, and we just focus on the education spot, and it's super rewarding. So if you're into that kind of, you can see the need, and you just got to take that plunge. And I said, our business structure, as Mike alluded to, is we make it super affordable. We don't just target the biggest farms. We make it at a price point that small farm, big farm, starting farm, growing farm, our customer base is just all over the place. There's quite a few members that are previous or current Total Acre members that have found us, because they're out looking for that kind of thing, and they're not just in Total Acre but in other places. That learning mentality, that's generally they get attracted to our kind of courses and work and things we offer.
That one thing, Jeff, turned into two or three, but I like it. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing that's intentional to what we do is when you sign up for our winter class, everybody in your group gets in under one tuition payment, because we intentionally want everybody, even if some of them have to be dragged kicking and screaming, to be singing off the same sheet, because it's really, really crucial when you think about a good merchandising plan cinches up with your operations, with your labor, with your logistics, with your agronomy, with your financial and balance sheet and cash flow discussions. So it's really crucial to see how this all cinches up amongst your team, and we make it very accessible. It's all recorded if you can't make it live, but we intentionally make it super competitive. Even in large operations where like 5 people under one tuition payment can get in.
I like it. Yeah. Especially in these days, right? That's a really big deal. Guys, access to information to me is everything, right? And I think as we look at what Total Acre kind of brings to the marketplace, it is different. What you guys are doing is different, but that access to information, as long as you can consume that information, it turns into knowledge. That knowledge is power, right? If we have that power, we can make the right decisions to turn it into ROI and profitability. And I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff. For those that want to learn more, where do they go, Jeff?
The real high level, you can go to the website, which is agrisacademy.com. And like Mike said, we're directly connected. You can email us. The emails are on the website, or it's info@agrisacademy.com. And I think our phone numbers are out there on the web to tell you that's, how accessible we are. Mike and I will actually variously, of course, I'll be at some various Total Acre events. I know we just, there's that sitting around the round tables in the evenings when everything is done. Come find me. We're super approachable. Lots of guys we know. But that's the easy way to get to us. Just email us, phone us. We're going to pick up the phone. I have a hay business that lots of horse girls call me, so we do answer all kinds of phone numbers. And Mike and I, we just focus on being super available, and just even for that starter question or that challenge. And that's the easy way to get in class. And then, as we get in, we're out on the speaking circuit this summer. And then come fall, right after Thanksgiving, is when we kick off that first class. And the class is just, there's a lot of excitement around the class, and it's a real learn by doing class. Usually has some bushels, in the fall that you're still working on, and you're looking at next year. And I just think that I'm more of a visual do learner. And so having your own bushels and your own money at stake really helps cement that learning. Just kind of throw this last kind of piece. So generally speaking, we take about 6 or so what we call retained clients a year. Most of them have been through the class, and that's kind of an ongoing learning agreement we have with them. We do take a couple, depends upon the situation, we will take kind of one-off farms that haven't been through the class. And usually those are farms where you got a lot of constituents, and you really want to ramp them up fast. Obviously, there's farms that are of certain scales that are just leaving tremendous amounts of money on the table, and it doesn't just take us long to pay for it. So that's kind of the ways we're speaking. We go do some paid speaking in the wintertime. Of course, I'm out farming in the summer, hopefully farming. And then we have the class, we have the retain program. We do some winter workshops too, so kind of some one-day fast-hitting deals that really kind of get you the best of our class. We've been doing that too. So lots of different ways to connect with us.
We tend to put out market snippets or market mantras or merchandising mantras out on X. We have an X account at Agris Academy. And shall we say an emerging Facebook presence too that we just started. So.
Sure. I love it. Listen, guys, that's what it's about, right? Again, I'll talk till I'm blue in the face, is getting information into growers' hands and making it easy to do. I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff. Hope to see you guys down at the Grower Clinic here in February. For those interested in learning more about Total Acre, reach out online, totalacre.com. Jeff, Mike, thanks so much for the time this morning. Really appreciate talking to each of you. If I can help, let me know. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in today to this episode of the Total Acre Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed it, you like the conversation, be sure to subscribe. You know the drill. Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Go give us a click, give us a like. Until next time, though, keep pushing forward. We hope that you found something unique, something powerful here that might help you unlock your farm's potential. We look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe. Talk more here soon on the next Total Acre Podcast.